The training arena was alive with energy. Thousands of young cadets from different worlds filled the seats, their voices echoing across the giant hall. It was the start of the combat trials, the day every new cadet waited for. The air was sharp with excitement, filled with the promise of glory and humiliation. Victors would earn respect. Losers would be forgotten. But the noise grew louder when a human girl stepped into the center. She walked slowly, her boots striking the metal floor with a steady rhythm. She looked too young, too fragile, compared to the creatures around her. She carried no weapon, no shield, no armor glowing with alien technology. Just a plain academy uniform. The crowd reacted instantly. They laughed, pointed, and shouted insults from the stands. Is this a mistake? A human in the trials? One alien jeered, his voice dripping with mockery. She has never fought a real battle, another shouted. She will be crushed in seconds. Laughter rolled through the arena like thunder. The human girl did not answer. She stood in silence, her expression calm, almost unreadable. That quietness only fueled the arrogance of the others. From the side, the announcer raised his hand for order. He was tall and covered in silver scales that reflected the light. His voice boomed through the arena. Cadets, today you face the challenge that proves your worth. Every species, every warrior must stand in combat. Today, the human will fight. The silence broke into wild cheering. Several cadets pushed forward, all wanting to be her opponent. Some wanted the glory, some wanted the entertainment, and some simply wanted to humiliate her kind. One massive figure stepped out first. He was broad and thick with muscle, his tusks curving upward like weapons, his heavy steps shaking the floor. Let me fight her, he growled. This will end quickly. The crowd cheered in agreement. The thought of a fragile human against such a warrior seemed laughable. The announcer nodded. So be it. The tusked alien marched into the center, towering over the girl. He grinned, showing sharp teeth. Don't be afraid, human. I will make this fast. His voice carried amusement, as if this was nothing more than sport. The girl lifted her eyes to him, her calmness unbroken. She said nothing. She did not raise her fists. She did not prepare to fight. She only breathed slowly, her hands relaxed at her sides. The crowd grew louder, shouting insults and laughing harder. She doesn't even know how to fight, one yelled. Look at her stance. She's useless. Even some of the instructors shook their heads. To them, it seemed unfair. This human would be destroyed in seconds. The announcer lifted his hand again. Begin! The tusked warrior crouched low, preparing to strike. His grin widened. He expected fear, panic, trembling. But the girl did not move. She only lifted her hand slowly to her collar. At first, no one noticed. But then, as her fingers pulled the cloth aside, a ripple of surprise spread through the front rows. On her skin was ink. Dark, bold lines carved into patterns. A single tattoo. Then another. Then more. The arena began to fall silent. She lowered her collar further, exposing her shoulder and the markings that spread across it. Each line carried weight. Each symbol carried meaning. Whispers cut through the silence. Wait. Those are not normal marks. No. Those are war tattoos. Impossible. She's too young. The laughter died instantly. The crowd that mocked her moments ago now leaned forward, staring with disbelief. They knew what those marks meant. They were not decorations. They were records. In many cultures, every tattoo was earned through combat. Every symbol represented a victory. And some of the designs etched into her skin were old, ancient, marks from battles spoken of in history, not in classrooms. The tusked warrior froze. His grin vanished. He knew one of those symbols. It belonged to the War of Khazar Fields, a conflict that destroyed entire fleets. Veterans spoke of it in whispers. No cadet should carry that mark, yet it was on the shoulder of the girl standing before him. The announcer himself leaned forward, his silver scales flickering in the light. He recognized them too. Not just one. Several. Wars thought impossible to survive, campaigns that broke empires, battles where even generals perished. And this human carried the proof of survival. The girl still said nothing. She did not brag. She did not explain. She simply let her collar fall loose, her tattoos visible for all to see. The ink told the story she never spoke. The arena, once roaring with laughter, was now silent enough to hear her steady breathing. The cadets who had mocked her shifted nervously in their seats. Some whispered, some stared in disbelief, some began to realize what she truly was. She was not untested. She was not weak. She was a survivor of wars they could not even imagine. The tusked warrior took a step back, his muscles tight. His earlier confidence melted into unease. Facing her no longer felt like sport. It felt like standing before something dangerous, something far beyond him. The girl finally raised her head fully, her eyes steady, her silence sharper than any words. In that moment, before the first strike was thrown, the challenge had already changed. The human, mocked for being unworthy, had turned the arena upside down. And without lifting a single hand, she had already won the first fight, the fight for fear. The arena had fallen into a silence so heavy that even the smallest sound seemed loud. A few moments ago, the crowd laughed at the human girl. Now, every eye was fixed on the tattoos inked across her skin. The laughter had turned into whispers, whispers into confusion, and confusion into something even deeper, fear. The tusked warrior, who only minutes ago stood with pride, now looked uneasy. He had thought she would be an easy win, a soft target. But the marks on her body told a story of battles no cadet should have survived. He clenched his fists, forcing a grin back onto his face, but the doubt in his eyes betrayed him. "She can't be real," someone in the crowd muttered. "Those tattoos are only worn by veterans of galactic wars." "She's lying," another voice insisted, trying to sound confident. "They must be fake. Just painted symbols to scare us." That single idea caught hold, spreading quickly. It was easier for them to believe the tattoos were fake than to accept the truth. The audience began to convince themselves. Their fear became denial. The tusked warrior laughed, though his voice cracked slightly. "So you've drawn pictures on your skin, little human? Do you think that will make me afraid?" The crowd roared again, but this time the cheer carried hesitation. Many of them still could not erase the images of those old symbols, the ones they had seen in history texts. Some of them were too precise, too detailed to be mere paint. The girl still stood silent, her face calm, her collar loose enough to show the stories written in ink. She did not respond to the mockery. She did not argue. She didn't need to. The silence itself was her weapon, and it unsettled them more than any words could. The announcer cleared his throat, his silver-scaled face tense. Even he could not decide what to believe. He knew the meaning of at least 3 of those tattoos, and none of them should belong to someone so young. His eyes narrowed. "The challenge continues," he said, his voice steady but uncertain. The tusked warrior circled her now, slower than before. His arrogance had dimmed. He raised his fists, his movements more cautious. "If you have truly fought," he said loudly, "then fight me now, or admit it. Admit you are a fraud hiding behind painted lies." The audience cheered, clinging to his words. They wanted proof. They needed to believe she was nothing more than a trick. If she stayed still, their doubt would turn into confidence again. But the girl remained motionless. She let him circle, let the crowd shout. She breathed in, steady and calm, as if she was waiting for something. Her silence screamed louder than their voices. "Why doesn't she fight?" someone in the back called out. "If she is truly a warrior, why doesn't she prove it?" "Because she has never fought," another shouted, desperate to bring back the old narrative. "She is only pretending." The words gained strength. One by one, the cadets began repeating them. Their fear was slipping into anger. Anger was safer. Anger was easier to accept than the possibility that this human carried the weight of wars they couldn't imagine. The tusked warrior smirked again, his doubt buried under forced confidence. "They believe me now," he muttered under his breath. He raised his hand toward her face, intending to push her, to force her to respond. The girl's eyes lifted at last, meeting his gaze. They were not angry. They were not afraid. They were simply steady, like eyes that had looked into fire before and survived. For the first time, the tusked warrior felt his heart beat faster. His instincts screamed at him that this was not a trick. Still, he pushed forward, eager to prove otherwise. The crowd leaned in. Everyone was waiting for the first strike. Everyone wanted to see what the human would do. Would she reveal herself as a fraud? Or would she confirm their darkest suspicions? But instead of moving into a fighting stance, she did something unexpected. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted her collar even lower. More tattoos, more symbols, more stories carved into her skin came into view. The whispers turned to gasps again. These marks were older, sharper, etched in patterns that only the oldest veterans recognized. A voice from the stands cried out, That one is from the siege of Alt-Heron. I saw it in my father's records." Another shouted, "No cadet could have survived that battle. No soldier could have." Doubt returned, crashing over the crowd like a storm. The anger faded. The denial cracked. If one tattoo could be dismissed as a trick, what about 10? What about 20? Each mark told a story that could not be faked. The tusked warrior stepped back, his eyes wide. His breath came quicker now. He wanted to speak, to mock her again, but the words stuck in his throat. He could not laugh anymore. The announcer's voice trembled slightly as he spoke again. "The trial continues, if the human chooses to fight." And that was the moment the doubt spread everywhere. No one laughed now. No one smirked. They looked at her differently, uncertain of what she was. Fraud? Survivor? Monster? Even the council members watching from the shadows leaned forward, their eyes narrow. They whispered among themselves, their voices low, their words sharp. They needed answers too. But the girl stayed silent. Her eyes moved across the crowd, then back to her opponent. Her calmness burned through their doubt. She was not here to explain herself. She was here to let them see the truth when the time came. And though the trial had not truly begun, the arena was already shaking with one question that no one wanted to speak out loud. What if she really had fought all those wars? The arena was still buzzing with whispers. Doubt filled the air like smoke after a fire. Some cadets were convinced the tattoos were fake. Others were starting to believe the impossible. But one thing was certain, no one was laughing anymore. The tusked warrior stood frozen, his fists still raised but his body stiff with hesitation. His grin had vanished, leaving only unease behind. He had never been afraid of an opponent before, yet this small human girl, standing calmly before him, made his chest tighten. She had not thrown a single punch. She had not spoken a single word. And still, the balance of the fight was already shifting in her favor. "Fight her!" someone shouted from the stands, trying to push the tension away. "Prove she is a fraud." "Yes, strike her down," another yelled. "Make her bleed." The tusked warrior wanted to obey, to charge forward and end the trial quickly. But something inside stopped him. His eyes kept going back to the tattoos on her skin. Some of them he recognized, others he didn't. They were not drawn like decorations. They were precise, sharp, and carried a weight he could feel even from a distance. The human girl finally moved again. She reached for her collar, lowering it even more. This time the hall gasped louder, because the tattoos spread further than anyone imagined. Across her chest, down her arms, symbols wove together into a story only she could carry. Veteran instructors leaned forward, their eyes wide. One of them whispered to another, "That mark, it belongs to the Draxian uprising. I served in that campaign. Cannot be faked." Another hissed back, "Then how is she alive? No one survived that war." The whispers traveled through the crowd like a wave. The cadets, once so sure of her weakness, now felt a strange mix of awe and fear. They had mocked her for never fighting, yet the truth was turning their words into lies. The tusked warrior tried again to speak, forcing his voice to sound strong. "So you carry marks," he said. "So what? They do not prove you can fight. They do not prove you are strong now. but even he could hear the doubt in his words. His voice shook. His hands trembled. The girl tilted her head slightly, her eyes fixed on him. Still, she gave no reply. Her silence was heavier than a roar. And then, unexpectedly, the announcer spoke again. His silver-scaled face looked tense. "Tell us, human," he said slowly. "Where did you earn those marks? What wars have you seen?" The entire arena went quiet, waiting for her answer. For the first time, the girl lifted her chin and let her voice carry across the hall. Her tone was calm, soft, but every word cut like a blade. "I fought where no one else returned. I stood in battles that erased fleets. I walked through fire and ash when others fell to the ground. These marks are not paint. They are memory." The silence that followed was chilling. Everyone could feel the truth in her words. They were not shouted, not desperate, not exaggerated. They were simple, steady, and heavy with reality. The tusked warrior swallowed hard. His arrogance was crumbling. For a brief second, he saw not a fragile human girl but a shadow of something greater. A survivor carved out of endless war. The cadets began to murmur again, but this time their tone had changed. No one mocked her now. No one dared to call her weak. Instead, their voices carried confusion, awe, and even respect. "She cannot be a cadet," one whispered. "She should be teaching us, not standing among us," another muttered. "She is dangerous," someone else said quietly. The council members sitting high above the arena exchanged glances. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but their eyes burned with interest. The girl was no ordinary cadet, and they knew it. Her presence raised questions they could not ignore. Who had sent her here? Why had she come? The tusked warrior finally stepped back, lowering his fists. His body shook with conflict. He wanted to fight, to defend his pride, but his instincts screamed at him to stop. Yet stopping would mean admitting fear in front of everyone. The human girl didn't move closer. She simply let the tattoos speak for her. Every mark was a story. Every line was a scar of history. The announcer broke the silence once more, though his voice carried unease. "The challenge is not finished," he said. "But the question remains. Who among you dares to doubt her now?" The cadets looked at each other. No one raised their hand. No one volunteered to join the fight. The arena, which had been loud with laughter earlier, now trembled with hesitation. The tusked warrior stood alone, realizing the burden now rested on him. He was the one chosen to fight her, but his courage was drowning under the weight of her past. He clenched his fists tighter, trying to silence the fear in his heart. The girl watched him calmly, her eyes never leaving his. She had revealed enough of her story for now. The rest would be shown in action, not words. The hidden past was no longer hidden. The arena knew she was not what she seemed. She was something more, something dangerous. And the real fight had not even begun. The arena felt different now. The laughter that once filled the air had died completely, replaced by a silence that carried its own weight. Every eye was locked on the human girl standing calmly in the center. The tattoos across her skin were no longer just marks. They were thunder in the minds of everyone watching. The tusked warrior tried to steady his breathing. His pride screamed at him to fight, but his instincts whispered caution. He had fought many battles inside the academy. He had broken bones, won respect, and carried scars of his own. But never had he stood before someone who felt so much larger than herself. She was smaller, weaker in appearance, but she carried the weight of galaxies on her skin. The crowd's whispers were sharp, almost fearful. "I know that mark," one cadet muttered, his voice shaking. "My grandfather spoke of it. It was from the Firestorm campaign. Entire fleets burned there. And that one?" another gasped, pointing at her arm. "The siege of Alt-Heron. No one survived that battle. No one." The instructors exchanged uneasy glances. They had trained soldiers for decades, but even they could not explain this. How could a cadet, young, quiet, almost fragile, bear the symbols of wars that had ended before she was even born? The announcer shifted uncomfortably, his silver scales glinting in the light. He had seen many warriors, some brilliant, some legendary, but never had he seen silence hold such power. The girl had spoken only a few words, yet the entire arena was shaking with their meaning. The tusked warrior growled, trying to break the tension. "These stories, these lies mean nothing," he shouted. His voice echoed too loudly, betraying his nerves. He stepped closer, fists raised. "I will show you all the truth. She is nothing." But even as he spoke, his steps slowed. His muscles trembled. He could not look directly into her eyes for long. They were not angry eyes, nor fearful ones. They were steady, quiet, almost sorrowful, like eyes that had already seen too much. The human girl lifted her head slightly, letting the tattoos show in the bright arena lights. She didn't move into a stance. She didn't prepare to block or strike. She simply stood there, as if waiting for the storm to come. The crowd gasped again. The silence spread wider, heavier, like a wave rolling across the sea. For the cadets, it was no longer about a fight. It was about survival. They looked at her as if she was something more than human, something beyond the academy, beyond their reach. One of the younger cadets whispered, "She looks like death itself." Another corrected softly, "No, she looks like someone who walked through death and returned." The shock spread into the ranks of the veterans watching. They could not dismiss her as a fraud anymore. Too many symbols were too precise. Too many marks told stories only true survivors could carry. The tusked warrior clenched his fists tighter. His pride demanded action. He charged forward with a roar, his heavy feet pounding the floor. The ground shook beneath his weight as he swung his arm, aiming to crush her with a single blow. But at the last moment, something strange happened. The girl did not move. She did not flinch. She only tilted her head, her calm eyes following him with the ease of someone who had seen such attacks countless times before. And when his fist came close, she shifted just slightly, barely a breath's worth of movement, and his strike missed. The tusked warrior stumbled forward, his roar dying in his throat. He turned quickly, swinging again. But again, she moved with that same effortless calm, stepping aside as if she already knew where his strike would land. The arena gasped louder. This was not luck. This was skill, the kind of skill that only came from years of fighting real battles. The tusked warrior's face twisted with frustration. He attacked again and again, his strength shaking the arena, but every strike found only empty air. The human girl never raised her fists, never struck back. She simply moved, silent and fluid, letting him wear himself down. The crowd was stunned. Their doubt began to die. Their disbelief shattered with each failed blow. The tattoos were no longer the only evidence. Her movements confirmed the truth. She was not pretending. She was not a fraud. She was a warrior. The whispers turned into silence again, and then into fear. Some cadets gripped their seats tightly, their hearts racing. Others could not look away, caught between awe and terror. The tusked warrior finally stopped, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. He glared at her, but deep down he already knew the truth. He had been fighting with all his strength, and she had not even needed to fight back. The girl looked at him, calm and steady. She did not mock him. She did not smile. She only stood, her tattoos glowing faintly under the lights, as if reminding the world of every battle she had survived. The arena felt colder now. The cadets realized they were not watching a trial anymore. They were witnessing a storm in human form. And in that silence, the shockwave of her hidden past rippled through every heart in the arena. The arena was filled with heavy silence. The tusked warrior stood in the center, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Sweat gleamed on his skin, dripping down his arms. His fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles turned pale. He had attacked again and again, but every strike had cut through nothing but air. The human girl had not hit him once. She had not even raised her fists. She had only moved small, precise, effortless steps that left his powerful blows crashing into emptiness. It was as if she had been walking through his attacks, not fighting them. The crowd was frozen in disbelief. Cadets who once mocked her now sat on the edge of their seats. Their eyes were wide, their mouths open. They whispered to one another, but their voices carried no laughter now. She moves like she already knows where he will strike. It's impossible. No one has reflexes like that. She's not fighting. She's just waiting. Waiting. That word settled over the crowd like a shadow. They realized it too late. She had not come here to defend herself. She was letting him exhaust himself, letting him reveal his weakness. The tusked warrior roared in frustration, his pride burning hotter than his fear. He could not stop now. He had to land a blow, had to prove he was stronger. With another furious cry, he swung his arm down with all his might, aiming for her head. That was when it happened. The girl moved, not with hesitation, not with struggle, but with the sharpness of lightning. Her hand shot upward, catching his massive wrist in midair. The sound echoed through the arena like a crack of thunder. The crowd gasped as the warrior's strike stopped cold, frozen inches from her face. His eyes widened in shock. He pulled, trying to free his arm, but her grip did not move. It was steady, firm, unshakable. For the first time, she had touched him. And in that single touch, the balance of the fight changed completely. The girl's voice carried softly through the arena, calm but sharp as steel. One move is enough. Before the warrior could react, she twisted his wrist and pulled his arm downward. His massive body stumbled forward, his balance broken. Then, with a sharp, precise motion, she pressed her shoulder into his chest and flipped him onto the floor. The impact shook the ground. The sound of his body hitting the arena floor was like a cannon blast. Dust rose into the air as the crowd erupted in shock. The tusked warrior lay on his back, gasping, stunned. He had not even understood what had happened. One moment he was attacking. The next he was staring at the ceiling, defeated in a single motion. The human girl did not move to strike again. She stood tall, calm, her collar loose, her tattoos glowing faintly in the light. She had made her point with one move, nothing more. The crowd exploded into whispers. She threw him down like he was nothing. No one has ever dropped him before. He's the strongest cadet. She didn't even hurt him. She just showed him she could. The instructors watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. They knew what they had seen. Her technique was flawless, every movement efficient and exact. It was not the skill of a beginner. It was the discipline of someone who had fought countless times before. The tusked warrior groaned, pushing himself back to his knees. His pride was shattered, but he could not stop. He glared up at her, anger burning through his humiliation. You think this means you've won? His voice cracked with desperation. I'm not finished. The girl's eyes met his again. Calm, steady, unshaken. She did not speak, but her silence carried the answer. He was already finished. The warrior roared once more and lunged at her. But his movements were slower now, clumsy with exhaustion and frustration. She stepped aside easily, her body moving with the grace of a shadow. With a sharp pivot, she placed her foot against his chest and pushed. The warrior stumbled backward, crashing into the ground again. The arena gasped, louder this time. Fear was spreading now, not just awe. The cadets realized the truth. She was not only stronger than she looked. She was controlling the entire fight without effort. The tusked warrior lay on the floor, coughing, his pride broken. He tried to rise again, but his body refused. His eyes filled with something he had not felt before, dread. The human girl stood silently above him. She had not bruised him, had not drawn blood, had not even used her full strength. But she had shown the entire arena her truth. She could have destroyed him with one move. Instead, she had chosen mercy. The silence stretched until one cadet in the stands whispered, "She's not fighting to win. She's fighting to show us what she already is." The rest of the crowd understood. The tattoos were no longer just marks of her past. Her movements had confirmed everything. She was a survivor, a warrior, a living storm wrapped in human skin. The announcer hesitated before finally speaking, his voice trembling despite his effort to stay composed. The trial continues, but deep down, Everyone knew the truth. With one move, the human girl had already won. And for the first time, the Academy cadets feared her. Not because of what she had done, but because of what they now realized she could do. The tusked warrior did not rise again. He stayed on the floor, his chest heaving, his pride crushed. The sound of his heavy breathing echoed across the arena, filling the silence that followed his defeat. A few minutes ago, he had been certain of his victory. Now, he was nothing more than a shadow of himself, beaten not by brute force, but by one calm, precise move. The human girl stood over him, still silent, still calm. She had not hurt him beyond what was necessary. She had not needed to. Her point had already been made. She was no ordinary cadet. She was something the others could not understand, something that frightened them even more because she did so little and achieved so much. The cadets in the stands shifted uncomfortably. The same mouths that mocked her earlier now refused to speak. Their laughter had dried up, replaced by a heavy weight pressing down on their chests. They had come expecting entertainment, a spectacle where a weak human was humiliated. Instead, they had witnessed a storm wrapped in silence. One cadet whispered, "She didn't even fight him. She just ended it." Another muttered, "If she wanted, she could have broken him in half." The whispers spread like wildfire, each word adding to the tension. It was not just respect they felt now, it was fear. Fear of her strength. Fear of her silence. Fear of what else she might be hiding. The instructors at the edge of the arena were no different. Their eyes narrowed, their jaws tight. They recognized the truth in her movements. That grip, that throw, that effortless precision. It was the skill of someone who had faced real battles, not training drills. No amount of classroom teaching could give a fighter that kind of instinct. The announcer, who had once spoken with booming confidence, now hesitated before he raised his voice. "The trial is not finished," he said slowly, "but the challenge changes." His words sounded uncertain, almost forced, as if he was unsure of what came next. The tusked warrior groaned as he struggled to rise, his pride unwilling to stay down even when his body begged him to. He glared at the human girl, anger burning behind his eyes. Yet when he met her gaze, that anger faltered. Her calm stare pierced through him, steady and unshaken. It was not the look of an enemy desperate to win. It was the look of someone who had already survived worse than he could imagine. The crowd sensed it too. This was no simple cadet fight anymore. This was a reminder of something larger, something dangerous. One of the younger cadets turned pale. If she carries the marks of wars, does that mean she has killed before? The question hung in the air like a blade. No one wanted to answer it. No one wanted to admit what they already suspected. A veteran instructor finally spoke, his voice grim. "Those marks are not given for survival alone. They are given for victory." The arena fell deeper into silence. Victory meant more than endurance. Victory meant blood. Victory meant death. The realization crept into the hearts of the cadets. The girl they had mocked as weak, as inexperienced, had seen and done things none of them could even imagine. And if she had done it once, she could do it again. The tusked warrior's legs shook as he finally stood. His body leaned forward, exhausted, beaten. But his pride forced him to raise his fists again. "I will not be afraid of you," he said through clenched teeth. His words trembled, betraying his heart. The girl did not reply. She did not need to. Her silence said more than words ever could. The cadets began to see the truth, and it unsettled them more than anything else. She was not trying to win this trial. She had already won. Every movement, every calm gesture, every tattoo had been enough to shift the balance of the arena. She was no longer being tested, they were. Whispers spread again, this time heavier with fear. "What is she doing here? Why would someone like her join the academy? What if she is not here to learn, but to watch us?" The council members sitting high above leaned forward. Their sharp eyes glowed in the shadows, studying her. They whispered among themselves, words the cadets could not hear. Their interest was clear now. The girl had shaken the entire arena, and the council wanted to know why. The tusked warrior tried to lunge at her again, but his body gave out. He stumbled, falling to his knees. The crowd gasped, but the girl did not move. She only watched him with steady eyes, as though she had expected this outcome from the start. The announcer hesitated before raising his hand. "The trial continues," he said again, though his voice cracked. But everyone in the arena knew the truth. The fight was already finished. The human girl had done something no weapon could achieve. She had planted fear into their hearts. Not the kind of fear that fades after a battle, but the kind that lingers, the kind that spreads, the kind that changes how you see the world. They would never look at her the same way again. The awakening fear had begun. The tusked warrior could not rise again. His body trembled, his pride shattered, and his spirit heavy. He knelt on the cold arena floor, staring at the ground, unable to meet the human girl's steady eyes. The fight was over, even if no one had officially declared it. The human girl did not move toward him. She simply stood tall, her collar loose, her tattoos glowing faintly in the arena lights. She was calm, unshaken, almost quiet in her victory. She had not needed to break him. She had not needed to strike more than once. She had proven everything without violence. The crowd remained frozen. The same cadets who mocked her hours ago now sat with straight backs, silent and uneasy. None of them laughed anymore. None of them whispered doubts. They could not. What they had witnessed was undeniable. The announcer hesitated. For the first time in his long service, he could not find the right words. His silver-scaled hands shook as he raised his arm. "The challenge," he began, his voice cracking before he steadied it. "The challenge is complete." The arena gasped softly. It was not a roar of victory, not the usual cheering that followed these trials. It was a heavy breath of realization. Everyone in the hall knew they had seen something far greater than a cadet's test. They had seen a survivor of wars walking among them. The tusked warrior finally lifted his head. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, now carried something else entirely: respect. With effort, he placed his fist to the floor in front of him, bowing his head to the human girl. It was not surrender out of weakness. It was acknowledgement. He knew he had faced something far beyond him. The cadets in the stands shifted. One by one, they began to understand. The fear they felt was real, but it carried weight. It was not the kind of fear that made you run. It was the kind that made you recognize greatness. "She didn't fight to destroy him," one cadet whispered. "She fought to teach us." "She could have broken him," another added softly. "But she didn't. That's why she's different." The whispers turned into nods. Slowly, respect spread through the crowd. The fear was still there, but it was changing, reshaping itself into admiration. They could not mock her anymore. They could not dismiss her as weak. She had earned their silence, and now she was earning their respect. The instructors exchanged serious glances. They knew what this meant. A cadet who carried the scars of ancient wars was not just another student. She was a reminder that humans were not to be underestimated. If she had chosen to walk among them, it was for a reason. High above, the council members remained in shadow, their glowing eyes locked on the girl. They whispered to one another, their voices sharp, their words hidden. Their interest had grown stronger now. The girl was not just a fighter. She was a symbol, a secret wrapped in human skin. She had shaken the academy without lifting more than a finger. The tusked warrior pushed himself to his knees again. His pride still ached, but he no longer fought against it. He bowed his head fully, his voice steady but softer than before. "I respect you," he said. The words carried across the arena, heavy and true. The crowd gasped. It was rare for him, the strongest cadet, the most arrogant warrior, to show respect to anyone. And yet, he had bowed to the human girl. The girl did not smile. She only gave him a single nod, acknowledging his words. Her silence once again said more than any speech could. She did not need their approval, but she had earned it nonetheless. The announcer finally found his voice again, stronger this time. "The trial is complete," he declared, "and the human has passed." The arena erupted, not in mocking laughter, not in cruel cheers, but in a strange mixture of applause and silence. Some clapped their hands together in respect. Others simply bowed their heads. No one mocked her again. The human girl turned slowly, her eyes sweeping across the sea of cadets. Her tattoos still shone faintly under the lights, reminders of wars fought and victories earned. She looked at them not as enemies, not as rivals, but as witnesses. Witnesses to the truth she had revealed. And then, without another word, she pulled her collar back up, covering the tattoos once more. The hall gasped again. It was as though the storm had hidden itself, as though the living legend had vanished back into the quiet figure of a young human cadet. The respect in the air was undeniable now. The cadets no longer saw her as fragile. They no longer saw her as weak. They saw her as someone who had lived through battles greater than their imaginations, and yet stood quietly among them. The tusked warrior bowed once more, his voice low but filled with conviction. "You are no cadet," he said softly. "You are something far greater." The girl's steady eyes met his for the last time. She gave him a single, calm look before turning toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed through the silent arena, each step leaving a mark heavier than the one before. And when she finally disappeared beyond the gates, the hall erupted into a single truth that every cadet now carried in their hearts. The human was not just one of them. She was above them, a storm hidden in silence, a legend wrapped in flesh, a warrior who had already won the wars they only trained to imagine. And from that day on, none of them dared to smirk at her again.